Hey Vision Chasers, it's Dr. Bird here with another social studies lesson for you today. Hopefully you'll never ever have to deal with a bad neighbor. A bad neighbor, and unfortunately they do exist. A bad neighbor is someone who will keep their grass long, and so snakes and other small animals can hide in that grass. A bad neighbor is someone who will let their dog do their business in your yard. A bad neighbor is someone who plays loud music at inappropriate times of the day. A bad neighbor may leave a bright light on outside that shines in your bedroom window. That's a bad neighbor. Again, hopefully you'll never ever have to deal with a bad neighbor. But the United States, beginning in the late 1920s and into the 1930s, they wanted to kind of clean up their image and shift things so that they would be known as a good neighbor. Today's social studies lesson is about the good neighbor policy. Before we begin, we must define the word neighbor. Now, neighbor means near dweller. So someone who is near and someone who dwells. So that simply put together, that means someone who lives close to you. And in this instance, we're talking about the United States in relation to Latin America. As you can see here, as you look at this map, you see that the United States is close to the countries that make up Latin America. Now, towards the end of the 19th and at the beginning of the 20th century, the United States was very much involved in the affairs of these countries. But after President Hoover was elected in 1928, he decided that he wanted to change the United States foreign policy and the relationship of the United States in these countries. So after he was elected, he went on a tour, a 10-week tour throughout Latin America, and giving a series of speeches outlining his vision for the United States and its relationship with Latin America. And here is a little text from one of his speeches. He says, "I come to pay a call of friendship. In a sense, I represent on this occasion the people of the United States, extending a friendly greeting to our fellow democracies on the American continent. I would wish to symbolize the friendly visit of one good neighbor to another." So the main idea of this visit and the speeches that he gave was that he wanted the United States to be a good neighbor. Now, this was in sharp contrast to a former president, Theodore Roosevelt, who believed that the United States had the right to involve itself in the affairs of these Latin American countries because it was in the interest of the American people for the United States to do so. And in many instances, the United States would involve itself in these countries militarily. And so, as you can imagine, a lot of these countries didn't like the United States for that very reason. Hoover would also question the legality of the United States involving itself in the affairs of these countries. Additionally, he would start to remove troops who were stationed throughout these Latin American countries and bring them back into the United States. And for those who didn't believe President Hoover in this non-aggressive stance, they surely believed him when Japan attacked Manchuria, because ultimately the United States did not get involved, and President Hoover tried to use diplomatic tactics in order to remove Japan from Manchuria. Now, unfortunately, this didn't work, and at this point, we're on our way to another world war. But the point is that the United States was trying to be non-aggressive, and they wanted to be a good neighbor.
So President Hoover sounds like a nice guy, right?
A lot of people at the time did not think so, and that's why President Hoover did not earn a second term in office.
Mainly because of his response to the Great Depression.
Voters decided not to give him a second term. Instead, they voted in Franklin Roosevelt, the cousin of Theodore Roosevelt. And FDR decided that he was going to continue these good neighbor policies.
When he was inaugurated in 1933, Roosevelt stated that,
"In the field of world policy, I would dedicate this nation to the policy of the good neighbor, the neighbor who resolutely respects himself and, because he does so, respects the rights of others." And FDR would encourage cooperation amongst Central and South American countries. He would also continue to remove troops from these Latin American countries, just like Hoover did, although he would elect to keep the naval base in Guantanamo Bay, Cuba. So FDR continues to promote this good neighbor policy and a non-aggressive United States, even in the face of World War II that is definitely coming. And in 1938, FDR, his commitment to the good neighbor policy was definitely tested when Mexico would seize the assets, the land of foreign oil companies that were operating inside of Mexico. Now, some of these companies were owned by United States citizens, businessmen, and were held by American investors. And these investors were definitely upset. And so they go to FDR, they demand that he intervene militarily, of course, to get their assets back. So FDR is faced with a decision. Does he continue the good neighbor policy, probably upsetting these investors and these citizens of the United States? Or does he intervene militarily in order to take back those assets for these American investors? Now, what that would probably do is force the Mexicans to side with the Axis powers, which would definitely have changed World War II, I'm sure. And so the United States definitely did not want that. Now, unfortunately, long story short, well, fortunately, I should say, there was a settlement that was reached, and these investors, they got some of their money back, a large part of it back, but they ultimately did lose some money. But FDR, he went with the good neighbor policy in order to hammer out an agreement. And so that is the good neighbor policy. Please check the Vision Chaser's website for more tips and tools to help you as you chase your vision of success. Also, feel free to download the video that goes along with this video to further your knowledge of the good neighbor policy. And thank you so much for watching. And until we meet again, please keep chasing the vision. Bye.